Good morning. The first item of business is general questions, and at question number 1, I call Sue Webber.
Thank you. Good morning. To ask the Scottish Government how reform across health and social care will progress following the decision not to proceed with Part 1 of the National Care Services Scotland Bill.
Minister Marie Todd.
The First Minister announced plans last week to drive down waiting times and to reduce pressure on frontline services. Our draft budget sets out almost £2.2 billion investment in social care and integration. We've revised our approach to the National Care Service. Parts 2 and 3 of the bill will go ahead, reforming information records and standards, introducing Anne's Law, right to break for unpaid carers. We'll establish a non-statutory advisory board to drive improvement and to ensure services are consistent, fair and high quality across Scotland.
Thank you, Minister, for that response. The Edinburgh Integration Joint Board is facing another budget gap in the financial year ahead, requiring gross savings of £51 million. The previous Chief Officer indicated that integration has not been functioning properly in Edinburgh, with issues dating back to when the Scottish Government established the EIJB in 2015. In November 2023, the City of Edinburgh Council unanimously agreed a cross-party motion to review the integration scheme, but over a year later it's been alleged that NHS Lothian is pushing back against this review, as the current scheme sees the Council being required to continually bail out the IJB in Edinburgh. What is the Scottish Government doing to ensure the scheme of integration is working fairly for both the City of Edinburgh and NHS Lothian?
Minister.
So the member will be aware that these decisions, firstly in how to fund the Integration Joint Board when it was set up, and annual decisions in funding, which comes from both the local authority and from NHS Lothian, are for local leaders to make decisions on, and they are democratically accountable to the local population in NHS Lothian. I'm more than happy to look at how the integration scheme works and whether it is delivering for NHS Lothian, and whether indeed, as the member has asked me to, it is working well for others. We have in our programme for work moving forward some efforts to look at that, and I'd be happy to pick that up.
Claire Haughey.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Change in social care is needed, and we must all work to secure improvement. I understand from the Minister's statement delivered earlier this month that a new non-statutory advisory board will be established to drive improvement within the sector. Can the Minister therefore advise when this board is expected to meet and how quickly this group will be able to deliver vital reform?
Minister.
So we're moving quickly to establish an advisory board on a non-statutory basis with lived experience at its heart. We would expect the advisory board to meet for the first time in March 2025. That advisory board will be critical in the National Care Service's efforts to drive improvement and to ensure that services are consistent, fair and high quality. The need to strengthen national support and oversight of the system remains our core intention. The advisory board will include membership from people with lived experience of accessing care services, unpaid carers and members of the workforce, care providers, trade unions and the NHS and local government. And I would expect, given I've set out a path forward which I believe that everybody is able to get behind, I would expect that to have an impact rapidly.
Question number 2 is not lodged. I call Oliver Mundell at question number 3.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what action it is taking to improve NHS services in Dumfries and Galloway.
Cabinet Secretary Neil Gray.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. It's for health boards and its planning partners to plan and provide services that best meet the needs of local people, including those in rural areas, consistent with clinical best practice, national policies and frameworks. One example that Oliver Mundell might be interested in is that NHS Dumfries and Galloway were one of 2 boards to implement the new digital dermatology pathway last year, which allows patients to benefit from faster diagnostics and assessment of skin conditions. And once fully rolled out, this programme will impact 400,000 patients in Scotland over 3 years and reduce waiting lists by 36,000 hours.
Oliver Mundell.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that answer, and it's always good to hear these positive examples. But clearly, services are under pressure with a crisis in dental provision, challenges in the provision of primary care and worrying delays to hospital discharge. There is one patient in Dumfries and Galloway who's been stuck in hospital for 916 days. And whilst I accept these cases can be complicated, surely the Cabinet Secretary agrees this is unacceptable and drives growing fears amongst elderly constituents about going into hospital with a real fear that if they go in, they might not get back out. What is the Scottish Government doing to investigate such cases which are prevalent across Scotland, and what is it doing to address the growing challenges around delayed discharge?
Cabinet Secretary.
Thank you. I thank Oliver Mundell for his question. Clearly, I don't know the detail of the case that he has raised, but on the face of it, yeah, I would agree with him about its unacceptability. Often, particularly when there is longer cases such as the one he has quoted, there is complexity, as he has referenced. But I'm very clear that the current level of delayed discharge, and in particular the considerable variation across different areas, is not acceptable. And that's why the Government has been working with local health and social care partnerships and COSLA to identify key challenges and barriers, as well as identify and share good practice to support improvement. That work includes a particular focus on areas like Highland and Dumfries and Galloway that face the biggest challenge in terms of delay, and providing more direct whole system support to those areas. So I'm confident that our collaborative work in this space will deliver improvement, but I know that more needs to be done to support this, and that's why the 2025-26 budget includes a commitment of an additional £100 million funding to tackle delayed discharge, for example by further expanding hospital at home services. And if approved by Parliament, this funding will support our ambition to grow hospital at home to 2,000 beds by December 26, making it the biggest hospital in the country, helping to address hospital occupancy and address delayed discharge.
Emma Harper.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Last week, the First Minister outlined that a greater proportion of new NHS funding will go to primary and community care, and the Cabinet Secretary has just outlined greater collaboration and hospital at home as examples. Can the Cabinet Secretary speak further on how the 2025-26 budget will ensure GPs and services in communities across D&G will have the resources that they need to play a greater role in our health system, including helping with delayed discharge?
Cabinet Secretary.
Absolutely. Thank you, President Officer. The Scottish Government officials are currently determining the best allocation of the additional funding for primary care to ensure the maximum benefit of this investment. But the investment areas will cover the likes of increasing capacity in general practice and make it more consistent across Scotland, deliver a new acute anterior eye condition service during 25, which, with the community glaucoma service, will free up to 40,000 hospital appointments a year. We'll be expanding the Pharmacy First service so that more clinical conditions can be treated by pharmacists, and by targeting investment in the dental workforce to improve capacity and patient access, including a review of existing incentives for rural practices.
Carol Mockin.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The rate of patients seen within 4 hours at A&E departments in Dumfries and Galloway is the worst on record. While we understand the immense pressures NHS staff are under, the lack of capacity has led to treatment in areas which are unsafe, inappropriate and undignified. Last week, I asked the Cabinet Secretary if the Government would commit to publishing regular data on the levels of care taking place in inappropriate settings. The Cabinet Secretary failed to address the issue of data altogether. So I will ask again, does the Government intend to publish regular data on corridor care?
Cabinet Secretary.
I thank Carol Mockin for her question, and I accept the situation that she has set out in terms of the 4-hour standard, and we've rehearsed and discussed some of the issues that are driving that, including the hospital occupancy and delayed discharge issues that were referenced by Oliver Mundell and by Emma Harper. In terms of the RCN's report on corridor care and where we're at with that, I met with Colin Pullman, the Executive Director of the RCN, this morning, and committed to exploring further potential ways of being able to have a greater sense of what that picture looks like on a consistent basis, and therefore how we can address it.
Question number 4, Michelle Thompson.
To ask the Scottish Government how it plans to invest in the hospice care sector in light of the £4 million referred to in the draft budget of 25-26.
Mr. Jenny Minto.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The draft budget for 25-26 now includes £5 million of investment to support independent hospices to provide pay parity with NHS agenda for change levels. This aims to support hospices to retain staff who deliver essential end-of-life and palliative care services. My officials are already undertaking work to explore the mechanisms for providing this fund while respecting the rules of IJBs and local commissioning arrangements.
Michelle Thompson.
I thank the Minister for that response and, of course, putting onto the record that the draft budget is now a figure of £5 million. Now, I note that increase came about during the budget negotiations, and on a recent visit to Strathcarron Hospice, which provides invaluable end-of-life care for almost 500 patients and families in central Scotland, I was fortunate to speak to staff and learn more about the quite incredible work they do. However, the Chief Executive told me that one of the challenges facing them was Labour's employers' national insurance increase, which will put additional pressure on our budget that is largely funded by donations. And whilst the increased budget commitment is hugely welcome, what update can the Scottish Government provide on a new national funding framework for hospice care in Scotland to help mitigate the longer-term impacts of Labour's damaging policy?
Minister.
I thank Michelle Thompson for her question, and like her have had the privilege of seeing the incredible work that independent hospices do both personally and as a minister. I also recognise that Labour's decision to increase employer national insurance has created huge pressure across the whole of the public and third sector, including Scottish hospices, and if not fully funded by the UK Government, will pose real risks to service delivery. We remain committed to working with the hospice sector and IGBs to develop a new national funding framework which will support IGBs and independent hospices to agree sustainable funding, planning and commissioning arrangements to meet their local population's needs. We will be creating a partnership group to drive this work forward.
Miles Briggs.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The fact is that the hospice sector is facing a double whammy, firstly of the national insurance increases, but also that of meeting Agenda for Change. And the £5 million announced in the budget is welcome, but the sector is calling for £15 million just to stand still. Now, we know that there is £350 million available in contingency funds within the Scottish Government's NHS budget for this financial year, but if we don't see this addressed, hospices across Scotland for next year, and they're setting their budgets now, will just see this disparity increase even further. So can I ask the Minister whether or not the Scottish Government are looking towards that £15 million which the sector needs, not just the £5 million currently in the budget?
Minister.
I thank Miles Briggs for his question and recognise the work that he does in supporting hospices in his region, but also more widely across Scotland. As I referenced in my previous response, we are creating and have been working closely with hospices in Scotland about how we address the situation that has arisen, the double whammy, as Miles Briggs calls it, and we are creating, as I've said, a partnership group to drive this work forward, and I meet regularly with hospices.
Liam MacArthur.
Thank you. Can I welcome the additional funding that has been secured through the budget, part due to the negotiations with the Scottish Liberal Democrats, but you'll be aware, the Minister, of the debate around my assisted dying bill has shone a light on what are seen as gaps in access to palliative care, and I wonder what assurances she can give that through the palliative care strategy and indeed additional funding, some of those access issues can be addressed.
Minister.
I thank Liam MacArthur for his question and recognise the role that Liberal Democrats played in ensuring that the hospices received additional funding. I absolutely agree, in light of the bill that he is taking through Parliament, that it cannot be a choice. It cannot be one or either, which is why I'm very pleased that we had our palliative care consultation, which closed in January last month. And I think that's an important way of working forward to ensure that people in Scotland get the right options when it comes to end-of-life and palliative care.
Thank you. Question number 5 is not lodged. I call Pam Gossel at question number 6.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what its response is to the reported guidance issued by Rape Crisis Scotland and its definition of the word woman.
Minister Colcap-Stewart.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The Scottish Government is clear that the needs of survivors of rape and sexual assault must be the utmost priority of support services. Whilst we cannot intervene in the running of independent organisations, we are clear that access to separate or single-sex provision for survivors is a legitimate and proportionate response when providing support to rape survivors. We therefore welcome that Rape Crisis Scotland is currently consulting with members' groups and survivors to agree a clear approach to this matter within the terms of the Equality Act of 2010.
Pam Gossel.
I thank the Minister for that response. It was recently reported that Rape Crisis Scotland has dropped its pledge to define the word woman, after a series of scandals over the service's embrace of gender ideology. This does not give reassurance to survivors of rape and sexual assault that this charity will be safe, single-sex space for them. Therefore, I'd like to ask if the Minister agrees with me that adult human female is the only appropriate definition of the word woman.
Minister.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. My response is that a woman is an adult female. That is clear. But it is simply a fact that trans people also exist and have always done so. This is not new.
Thank you. Question number 7, Jeremy Balfour.
Thank you, President Officer. To remind the Chamber that I am the convener for cross-party group on funerals and bereavement, to ask the Scottish Government what consideration is given to making bereavement education a formal part of the school syllabus.
Minister Natalie Dawn-Innes.
The Curriculum for Excellence includes health and wellbeing as one of the 3 core areas that are the responsibility of all schools. Schools develop the curriculum to suit their local context and meet the needs of their pupils, which includes delivering learning on bereavement. Education Scotland have developed teaching resources to raise awareness of childhood bereavement and the impact of adversity and trauma, while helping to mitigate the effect of these experiences. Young Scot have also developed advice and resources for children dealing with bereavement. This work aligns with recommendations to improve support for children experiencing bereavement.
Jeremy Balfour.
Can I thank the Minister for her answer? Whether it's a beloved relative or a pet guinea pig, bereavement is something that all of us will face at some point. And yet, Cruise and other organisations have pointed out that there is still a lack of a core curriculum to help children learn how to deal with it. Would the Minister be willing to meet with me, with Cruise and other organisations to discuss how we can take this forward to benefit children across Scotland?
All children should be supported. All children and young people should be supported who have experienced bereavement. As I have alluded to, and as the member is aware, the Curriculum for Excellence is not a statutory curriculum, but more a broad framework designed to give schools the flexibility they require. That being said, there are programmes delivered in Scotland to support children and young people through grief and loss, such as Seasons for Growth, the core element of which is the promotion of social and emotional well-being after a loss. However, we continue to work with Education Scotland to build on the work to date and identify any gaps. I'm aware of Cruise Scotland's work to date supporting children and young people, and I'd be happy to meet with the member to explore this further.
Thank you. Question number 8, Colin Smith.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what the current average timescale is for non-criminal complaints against the police to be allocated for investigation by Police Scotland.
Cabinet Secretary Angela Constance.
Presiding Officer, the Day-Milish Angelini review recommended that the Complaints and Conduct Committee of the Scottish Police Authority should hold Police of Scotland to account for delays in investigations into complaints and misconduct. Police Scotland report on the average timescales for completion of complaints and the proportion completed within 56 days. They do not break this down to measure the time taken for the allocation of a complaint. The Police Scotland Professional Standards Department provides a quarterly report to the Complaints and Conduct Committee, and the member can access a full breakdown of their performance on the Scottish Police Authority website.
Colin Smith.
Presiding Officer, it's now routine that when I write to Police Scotland on behalf of a growing number of constituents who have made complaints about Police Scotland but have heard little or nothing about that complaint, often after months and in some cases more than a year, the response is not only is there no timescale to deal with the complaint, but Police Scotland can't even give a timescale for when a complaint will even be allocated for investigation. Cabinet Secretary, when will we see what is clearly a growing level of unacceptable weights tackled? How can the public have confidence in the police if, when something does go wrong, the police don't seem interested in actually investigating it on time?
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding officer, the statutory guidance is very clear that complaint inquiries need to be completed with a letter explaining the outcome, that has to be done within 56 days. I've listened very carefully to the members' comments. I have also given a commitment to other MSP colleagues that I will raise this issue with the Chair of the Scottish Police Authority when we next meet, as the SPA have responsibility for holding Police Scotland to account on these matters. And in terms of the most recent data that went to the Scottish Police Authority, they have shown a decrease in complaints year to year and the 5-year average. But I will indeed pick up the specific issues the member has raised when I next meet the Chair of SPA.